Hello and welcome to this virtual tutorial, which again, I'm sorry we have to do it this way, but we're going to have to start sort of going with this whole social distancing thing. So this particular tutorial I wanted to do in person because I wanted to be able to answer any questions that you would have as we did it, but we can't. And so what we're going to have to do is take it nice and slowly, step by step. And so as you're playing this back, try to repeat the steps that I'm doing. And if you do get stumped, you can email me and we'll work something out. But at least for the moment, we're going to try it this way. But it's absolutely critical that you follow the steps and understand why you're doing it as you can understand it. And so if you don't understand it, just follow it, see what happens, and then it'll come to you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion of what we're going to do, and then we're going to sort of take you through step by step what happens as we do it. And one more thing, unfortunately, you don't have access. If you don't have access to the program of your own, you will have to do this online. So you'll have to bring the tutorial with you, either by putting headphones into the computers in the lab, or depending on where you're working, it might be easier. Or you can even bring your cell phone and refer to that. It's probably easier if you've got a nice big screen in front of you, obviously. So once again, we're going to talk about what we're going to create before we create it, and we're going to create a wiffle ball. Now, to be honest, I have no idea if anyone knows what a wiffle ball is, because a wiffle ball is kind of like a cheap version of a baseball. If you're too young to play with baseballs, you play with these little plastic balls that don't hurt as much if you get hit with them, that sort of thing. So a wiffle ball is kind of like a dog toy. It's a ball with holes in it. Probably should have gotten a picture of one, but you'll see soon enough. Okay, so we're going to create a wiffle ball, as I said. So if we're going to do that, again, what is a wiffle ball? I just explained it pretty well. It's a hollow plastic ball with holes in it. It's a sphere. Basically, we're going to start with a sphere, and that's what it's going to be. It's hollow. That's the only other obvious thing you need to know. And it's got multiple holes in the surface, and we'll show you an easy way of doing this so that they're nice and even. And how will we do it? How are we going to make a wiffle ball? Well, the first thing we're going to do is use the sphere primitive, meaning that you're going to take a ball. You're going to literally make a ball using the numeric pad to make it a perfect sphere. Then you're going to copy the sphere, put it on another layer, shrink it just a little bit, put it into the other sphere, and Boolean subtract it. So basically what you're going to do is take a sphere, which the computer will assume to be completely solid, and then basically eat out the center of it. So it's a hollow sphere. Now at that point, from the outside, it isn't going to look any different. But then we're going to take a cylinder and use that to subtract from the sphere surface to create the holes in the sphere. And the surface details, basically, it's only going to need one surface. It's basically a piece of plastic. And you get to choose the color. You can make it whatever color you want. And it's going to be a plastic surface, meaning that you probably wouldn't want it too shiny or too glossy, rather. Although in theory, you could make it look like whatever you wanted. And then the workflow will be relatively simple. So basically, we're going to do all the modeling in Modeler. You would think that would be obvious, but basically the first thing we're going to do is to create the actual wiffle ball. Then we're going to import the finished wiffle ball into layout, where we will set the camera angle. So basically we go from modeling to presenting. And then from there, we create a floor for it, because probably you want the wiffle ball to be on something. So we're basically going to create a surface for the wiffle ball to exist in. And then we're going to tweak the surface, get it looking right. Then we're going to take a picture, and then we're going to send the picture to me. That's basically all you're going to do. And so that's it. That is what we're going to accomplish. And so let us go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, so here we are in Modeler. And you see Modeler has the three different views. Top view, which looks down on your object. Your back view, which looks to the back from the front. And the right or the left, depending on how you want to set that. You can change that if you want. And we'll leave it at right. And then of course you've got your perspective view, which allows you to move around it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start in the Create tab. All we're going to do is make a ball. So I turn ball on. Now notice when I turn ball on, my cursor becomes a ball. And if I turn ball off, it's off. So I'm going to turn it on right now. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a ball by left-hand clicking and dragging. And I can also position that ball. And now this is all being done on one axis. So at the moment, it's not really what you'd think of as a ball because it's got no height. So I have to modify it on this axis as well to give it that look. So now it's a ball. Now, if I'm not, if this is all I do, it isn't yet finished, I'm going to hit the N button on my keyboard, and that gives me the numeric pad, and you can see the radius. Now remember, the radius is basically how much space is from the center of the ball to the edges. Notice on the x-axis it's 4.25 meters. On the y-axis it's 3.15. And obviously there's a problem then. Let me show you what that problem is. If I go over to my perspective view and I grab my little rotatey thing, you'll notice the ball wobbles. It's not really ready yet. And the reason why it does that is because it's not a perfect sphere. And in theory, it doesn't have to be, but we want it to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and just say every radius will be 4. 4. 4. And once I do that, then my sphere should be perfect. Now you see there it is. Now, aside from just that, I'm also going to go to where it says center, which is the next series going upwards, and I'm just going to zero those out. Everything will be at 0, and that becomes very important later because it makes it a lot easier to work on. Now, I could decide to add more sides. Right now it has 24 sides and 24 segments. If I add more sides, it gets more elaborate. There's more geometry. I am just going to stick with 24 because I don't want to make a lot of work for myself later. Plus, the more geometry you have for some of these functions, it could actually work against you. So we're just going to leave that alone, and that's it. Now I'm going to turn off ball. Now once I've done that, you see I've got a wiffle ball perfectly centered. Now, if you look at the architecture, there's nothing really going on there, and as far as the computer is concerned, this is a solid ball. This is like a bowling ball or a tennis, well, not a tennis ball. It could be like a bowling ball or just a carved sphere. And so that's not what a wiffle ball is. What we want to do is make a hollow ball. And so you might say, well, sure, it's hollow. All I've got to do to prove that is go over to polygon mode, grab one of those polygons, doesn't matter which it is, and delete it. And then suddenly I've got holes in my ball. Well, no. If you were to do that, if you were to look in on that, you'll see that you've got holes going into a complete empty dimension. So it's impossible geometry. It will not work. It cannot work. Don't do that. So I'm going to hit Control-Z and undo it. And then, of course, I'm going to deselect all those polygons. And so I go back to my solid ball. And so if I do want to create actual space inside it, I have to do it a different way. Fortunately, it's incredibly easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box around the whole ball. I'm going to lasso it. Now, and that's still in polygon mode. You do want to be in polygon mode when you do this. And I'm going to go to the edit function, and I'm just going to copy it. So I've copied the ball. Then I'm going to go up to my layers area. And there I'm going to go to the next layer. Now notice suddenly the ball disappeared because there's nothing in this next layer. So I'm going to go hit the corner of the first layer, and we can see the ball is back, but it's in the background. And so we go to Edit, Paste, and once we've done that, we appear to have got the ball back exactly where it was. You can see a little trace of a problem here because the perspective view says, you know what, we've got the same object in the foreground and the background at the same time, and it's trying to let you know that. And so this is close, but we want to make it work perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to shrink that ball by just a little bit. So I'm not going to select any polygons, because if I don't select any polygons, all of them are selected. And I'm going to go to my Modify tab. Now here, the layer that's got the pasted ball is the active one. Nothing I do in this layer is going to affect the first one. So all I'm going to do is go to Size, and I'm just going to take the whole ball down by just a little bit. Now notice this is affecting everything. Maybe just a little bit more. So on all dimensions, it is resizing the ball. Then I'm going to turn off Size, because I don't need it anymore, because I just want to give a very, very thin surface to that ball. Now right now, it's not perfect yet, but it's pretty close. If I go to Move, and you'll notice if I zoom in on that just a little bit, you can see this is off center. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it so that it's closer to being on center. And then I'm going to check it here. And you have to check it in all three views. And if you do that, you can even spin it, and it should not wobble. So if it doesn't wobble, you should be all right. Now, if I were to undo that and I were to spin it, see, it wobbles now. You see? You can see it's wobbling. And then if I were to redo it, and that would be redo, now it doesn't wobble. So that's perfect. All right, so now we're really close. We're really close. It doesn't have to be this much more complicated. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to go back to layer 1 with the original ball, because that's really all we need. Then I'm going to put layer 2 in the background, and you can see it in here, but you can see that the perspective view doesn't show you this, because I'm taking something that's literally inside the ball, and I'm highlighting it. And so you wouldn't be able to see that unless you carved a hole in the ball, which we will do later. Then all I'm going to do, I'll turn off Move so that doesn't get in my way. I'm going to go to the Construct tab, which is where you're going to find your Boolean function. And really, this is almost the only thing I ever do in that tab. And I'm just going to do a Boolean Subtract. Bang. Now, if I go over here, nothing looks like it's happened. But now, if I go into the second layer, I'm just going to delete that ball. I don't need that anymore. So here's my layer 1. You can almost see that something is different in the geometry. If you look, you now actually have an internal surface there. And that's the important thing. And so at this point, we can begin the next phase. Okay, so here we have the completed ball, which does not have any holes in it. So therefore, you cannot tell that it is a completed ball, but we're actually on track here. And so what I'm going to do is, at this point, I'm going to make the holes, which I'm going to call them the Wiffles. The Wiffles and the Wiffle ball are the holes. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a disc which is a hole. Now, the very first thing you need to do, which is easy to forget, you got to get out of this layer. So I'm going to go to layer 2 over here, and I'm going to put the ball in layer 1. And so the very first thing you need to do is make a disc. And so I'm going to make that disc right here in the center. So I'm going to draw that. Doesn't have to be, actually it does have to be a nice perfect circle, but let's, doesn't have to be very large, let's say. So let's say like that. Now notice it's roughly in the center there, but it's, if you look at down here, it's in the center there. So I'm going to drag it upwards. So I've got a nice big cylinder. And so the cylinder is going to poke a hole in the top and the bottom of the wiffle ball. Now if I go to my numeric pad, I can see a few different things going on here. Now first of all, my radius isn't perfect. Now notice I've got 500 millimeters, which is part of the radius there, by 550, which means it's not quite right. So I'm just going to change that 5 to a 0 so that the shape of the wiffle is perfect as a circle. I'm not going to care about this number though. All that has to be is taller than the circle, than the sphere rather. And then if I look over here, I can see the center points here, and I'm going to basically only worry about this one here. So I'm going to zero out that one. because I want it in the center there, but I don't necessarily expect it to be. Well, actually, I'm wrong. If I zero that out, it will grow from the right place, and that probably helps me. Yeah, so there we go. So what we've got here at this point is the first wiffle, but you know what? I am going to save myself a little time. And I'm going to do this by saying I'm going to poke 2 holes in the ball, but I could be there all day poking holes in the ball. So what I want to do instead is I want to take this shape here. I'm going to turn off disk, and I'm just going to, in polygon mode, I'm going to select it, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And so I've pasted it over itself. So then under modify, all I'm going to do is rotate it from this center point here. And I've got, and if you look down the lower left-hand corner of the screen there, you'll see that it hits 90 degrees. If I can get that to hit 90 degrees, I know that's a little bit of a challenge, but there it is. So now I've created two discs, and that will essentially form a cross section. Now notice it's not quite right there. So what I can do is I can then move it up a little bit. So there it puts that cross piece right about right. Now this doesn't really have to be perfect, but I kind of like it if it was. So we'll do the best we can. So we've got the first one, so therefore when I carve holes, I will have a hole on the top, hole on the bottom, and hole here and a hole there. Now those are the 2 critical ones, believe it or not, because we're going to make this even easier. And so then, while I'm still here, I'm going to do an edit paste, because I've already got the cylinder in memory. So then all I'm going to do is basically the same thing, except this time I'm only going to do that. You see? So I take it at a 45-degree angle, and so that will carve holes that way. And if I look at that, let's see if I can improve on that any. You know, honestly, I think that's pretty close. So we'll leave that one alone. Turn off rotate. I'm just going to do one more. So if I paste it again, I get another one of those things, and I rotate it same way. This time that's going to be 45-degree angles also, going that way. And if I do that, I think that I will have enough holes in that wiffle ball to make it look like a normal wiffle ball. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what happens next. So I'm going to make sure nothing is selected, and I'm going to deselect everything. So then I'm going to go here to my layer 1, and I'm going to put layer 2 in the background, and you can see what that's going to do to the ball. So then if I go to construct, Boolean Subtract, boom, what does that do? If I look around, I can see that I have carved several holes in that ball. And so if I just look at layer 1 and I zoom in on this, you can see into the ball as you do this. You can see the other holes there, and that's pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, once again, I want to save myself some time. So I've got the ball there. Now I've already done the top and the bottom holes, and so this could cause problems later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix this ahead of time. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to point mode. Point mode. In this case, it's the easiest thing to do. I'm going to grab the ones at the top, just those points, and I'm going to move them. I'm going to move them downward. I could just erase this whole section. In fact, that might actually be the easiest thing to do. For this particular case, I could just move that into the ball so it doesn't cause problems, but we can also just get rid of it altogether. So why don't we do that instead? Maybe that would make more sense. So if I go back to polygon mode, if I circle just those polygons, it's going to ignore the other ones because there's no points there to establish polygons. I'm just going to hit the delete button and get rid of that whole thing. So now it doesn't have that base piece. Now the only problem there is it won't be as easy to aim, but it will still work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this at 90 degrees. And so if I look at the bottom part, there is 90 degrees. And there it is, 90 degrees, I think. And then I'm going to go back here and back here. And it's important that I'm not carving any holes that are near the other ones, because if you do that, sometimes that can cause problems. So Boolean subtract, there are more holes. And so then notice that now I've actually done a lot of hole carving there. And so if I go back here, and then I'm still got rotate on. Now I'm going to rotate it to 45 degrees. And then if I go back here, boom, construct, Boolean subtract. Let's see what that did. Yeah, more holes there. So then if I go back here and here, then you can see I really only have to do one more. So if I take it there and if I'm looking down at since I kind of moved it randomly, I'm going to take that to 90 degrees because that's really the next logical place to go, because it's all in units of 45. Then I'm going to basically go here, construct, Boolean, subtract, and that should do it. Okay, so then I have a wiffle ball. So then let's go over here, delete that because we don't need it anymore. Then all we've got is our wiffly ball. And so I'm going to go to surface, change surface down here, and I'm just going to give it one surface, and I'm going to call it wiffle. That's it. That's the only surface I need. Then I'm going to save the object, and I will put it in week 4, and I'm just going to call it wiffle. There it is. Then if I go to my layout program, now remember, layout is your studio. I've got nothing on the studio, nothing whatsoever. And I'm going to load an object, and I'm just going to load wiffle, and there it is. It's a huge wiffle ball. So if I zoom out a little bit, there's the camera looking at the wiffle ball. And you can see now already we've got light and shadow. So that's all right. So I'm just going to go to the light here for a minute and pull the light back so it's not right on the object. And it may be that we'll need to add more lights later, but let's start with that. And so if I'm looking at the camera view, I'm going to see what the camera sees. The camera sees the wiffle ball head on. And right now that's not necessarily a problem. So we'll leave that alone for the moment. So we're seeing the wiffle ball with all the wiffles. And then I'm going to go over to Surface Editor. And remember, the wiffle ball only has the wiffle surface. And right now it's a white wiffle ball, and which is okay. We can leave it white for the moment. But I'm going to turn on smoothing, and automatically you get an enormous improvement. So now our wiffle ball has a surface texture that at least doesn't look like it's made out of blocks. So you can just see some of the issues with this because we didn't have a lot of geometry. We could have put more, but we're going to leave it this way for now. But it does actually work. And so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some specularity, which means I want to give it kind of that plasticky surface that you would expect to find. And if we want to make this a little bit better, I'm going to go over here to Texture Shaded Solid up top, and I'm just going to put down Virtual Progressive Render, which allows you to see what the computer is going to give you as a finished product. And here's where we might want to give this just a little help, just for our own sanity, because we're not really getting a really good view of this. So I'm going to go back to Modeler temporarily. And all I'm going to do is put a floor onto this object, just a floor. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go into my second layer. In this case, I wouldn't really have to do it that way, but I find it a little easier. And I'm just going to create a box. Now, the box, it may make you think, well, what am I going to put in the box? Well, it's not really going to be a box. All it's going to be is a platform. And so the platform is going to be below the ball. Really, that's all it is. And then I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to make this platform bigger. And I'm not going to give it that much more of my time than that. I'm just going to make a big box there. I'm going to turn off box. And so then from here, make sure I'm in polygon mode. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to change that surface to floor. And once I do that, if I'm over here, now suddenly my camera will now see the wiffle ball and the floor. Now, it also reset the camera position, which made it a little bit more tricky, but that's actually good because we're going to be able to fix that really easily. And I can even do that while staying in virtual progressive render, because if I select camera down here on the bottom, because remember, all of your tools, they're going to either be adjusting cameras or objects or bones or lights. Forget bones, we never use those. But if I want to move the ball, I'd use object. If I want to move the camera, so I'm going to highlight camera and go to modify, and move is already turned on. So if I push towards the object, you'll see that I can go towards that object, which is good. And that's actually pretty good. But I'm also going to right-hand push, and that's going to take me up a little bit. Then I'm going to change to rotate, and I'm going to left-hand pull just a little bit so I can get a better look at the object and how it is reacting to the surface. And so that's what we're going to do. Now the floor, I'm going to give a slightly different surface. It doesn't really matter what the surface is, but let's say I want the floor to be a different color. Let's say maybe a yellow floor. So that's the yellow floor. And so you can see that the wiffle ball is casting a shadow onto the floor, which allows you to see it a little bit better. And I can also, on the floor, let's say I give that a reflection. So you can see you can create a reflection of the wiffle ball. And let's do that, but let's do that by giving it some specularity first. So turn the specularity on, and maybe a little bit of glossiness, and just a hint of a reflection. So let's say that it's on like a mirror-like surface, and that's probably good enough. Now the wiffle ball itself, we could also make that a red wiffle ball, like that. And so you get to pick the color. You know, that's your wiffle ball. So we could also, let's say, make it a bright pastel blue or something like that. And you can see the way the light reacts with the holes in the wiffle ball. And from there, you can basically do anything you want. So we're going to stop it here. This is going to be our finished product. And so what I want to do then is I want to submit this for my grade in the class. And so that means that I'm going to hit the F9 key on the keyboard, and it is going to render a picture of the wiffle ball. And I'm just going to hit continue. And so that is my picture of the wiffle ball, and I'm going to save it. Under File here, I'm going to go to File, Save RGB. Now, I admit this is really ugly. This is really complicated looking, but somewhere in this nonsense, find the letters PNG. So I'm going to go to PNG 32 because that's the best one to use. It allows you to put something in that black space. I'm going to hit PNG 32, and I'm just going to drop it in there where the wiffle object was, and I'm going to call this wiffle underscore ball. And that's it. And it's saved. And so if you want to see this in action, you can close this now. Okay, so here we are in the file manager, and you see you're kind of behind, but backstage you're actually seeing the video files I'm creating now. But there is your wiffle ball. And so if you right-hand click and open that with, so you open with, and you can choose any of those, or just open up in Photos, And there you see, there is your picture of the wiffle ball, and that's all it is. So, therefore, all you got to do is open your email program, attach that file, wherever it happens to be. Go to your email program, attach that file, send it to pjoseph@methodist.edu, and I will receive it seconds later. And then, guess what? You will get full credit for the assignment. And basically, at this point, as long as it's a wiffle ball, as long as it looks, it can be any color you want, it doesn't necessarily have to be identical, but as long as it's a wiffle ball, you will get full credit for the assignment. And so that's it. And my hope is that this won't be that difficult to do. Just do it step by step. It may take you a while, but it does have to be done. And so I look forward to seeing what you create.